Hello and welcome to my 39DLL tutorial. This tutorial is on the 39DLL. It is highly complicated, you really should know that. Well, it could be 2D or 3D, but anyway, the entire concept is multiplayer over online. So with your GameMaker games, you can have, I don't know, you can make an MMO or, I don't know, an online FPS, something. It's really handy. So since GameMaker's multiplayer functions are not that advanced, they're mostly only usable over local networks. So 39DLL allows you to play multiplayer online. So I'm going to show you how to do that. Now the simplest way, or I don't know, most normal way, is to make a server and a client. Now, some people try to put the server and the client in the same program. I don't do that. I like to have them separate because it makes a lot more sense and it's a little easier to cope with. Anyway, so the idea is that if you've never I don't know, heard how a TCP connection works, is we have one server and a bunch of clients. All the clients connect to the server. So we have one server running, and then say client A sends X and Y position to the server, and then the server sends that info back to all the other clients, and then they move said player. So that's how it'll be working, but it's still not very easy to configure that. So let's go into our program here. So this is the server GMK file. So, well, yeah, I guess first you need to note that I am putting the 39DLL right next to these files so that it can load in properly. There probably is a .gex file, but I'm using the DLL because it's most standard, I guess. So here's the server GMK file. If I go into scripts here, you can see that I've imported all the 39DLL scripts. These just comes with it. You don't really need to, I don't know, look at any of these. You just need to call them up. You can look at them. Here's a lot of code. You do not need to write this out. It comes with the DLL. You can download it in the description. Anyway, it loads up the DLLs and a whole bunch of functions. Chances are really good you probably won't use them all, or even close to any of them. But we are going to use some of them. So, yep, let's go into the object. We have two objects here in our server. We have object control and object player. Now what the control does is, well, it controls things. So first it initializes the DLL, so this will load it in. That's the first script we saw. This will load in our DLL, and these variables, they don't really matter, just keep them the way they are. And then here we have actually starting the server using the DLL. So server TCP equals TCP listen. So then here we have a few different variables here that are important. Just leave the last one. We have this one, 7777. You can change this to pretty much any number. I don't know, 8080. Anyway, it is the port of our server. You will need to forward the ports on your router to allow whatever port you say for your server. So in this case, I would have to go into my router settings and forward port 7777, which I've already done, and I will show you later in the tutorial how to do that specifically. But it is a little bit different for every router, so you're going to probably want to look up a tutorial on how to do it on your specific router. But you will need to forward ports. Anyway, this next variable is 10. It's the limited amount of players. So no more than 10 clients can be connected to the server at any given time. However, you can change this number to whatever. The reason of the limit is there is so that you won't have mega lag when you have 100 people connecting to your server, because, I don't know, unless you have an Uber internet connection, you probably can't handle it. And then this variable down here that I set, global.players, this is just a variable representing how many players we have connected to the server at any given time. Very handy to have. So, okay with that. Step of object control. This will create objects, object player. Now what object player does is it represents each client. So if you have, so every time a user connects, it will create a player and then set its variable TCP to the TCP. So each client will be assigned to an object. And then that object will be sending data back and forth between the client and the server using this object. So we have to set sync and then set sync again after we're done. We have to accept the connection. And anyway, and then also this send var script function is an extra one. Let's see if I can pull it up there for you. This one goes with object player, so this means that every player object will be sending a message to their respective client. So it clears buffer, it writes byte, and then it writes so the byte, the first variable it sends, this is basically a packet anyway, first variable it sends is the ID of the packet, in other words. So yeah, you'll see how we do that later, and then it writes the integer and sends it. So that's how that works. So anyway, it's a few different script functions here, but the way you call it is you just go send var, and then we have the variable to send, and then we have the ID of the packet. So this will just tell all the clients how many players there are now, and then the client will respond and, I don't know, create more players. Anyway, in draw event here, we just have it drawing and the amount of players, but it's really quite useless because it's just in the server. So then in our player object, this is where a little bit more complicated things happen. It creates some variables here. The TCP, this is the variable that we changed in our control object when it gets created. And then global.players equals +1, and then lock play. So this will tell us which lock play here will tell us the ID of ourselves based on how many players are now. So anyway, and then it sends var to everybody what my current ID is. So this is what tells all the clients that there's a new object and what the ID of the object is. So that's very important. And then XX and YY, that's just variables there. So now what happens here is this is where all the sending and receiving happens. Okay, so remember this is unique to every client. So anyway, we have receive message, so this will tell us if there is a message from our client. So if it is 0, then that means that there is no client, and that's not good. So it'll destroy itself, basically, because there is no client to connect to, so it'll destroy. But if there is a variable in that M size, if there is a value, that means that there is a connection. So it reads the first byte, which will be the ID of our packet. So then we use the switch tree here to determine which value it is, because it can be multiple values. So anyway, case 0, we only have one packet being sent back and forth right first. So first thing it is it reads the integer x and y. This will be the integer of x and y that it sends from the client. So we read that, then we send that back out to everybody. So then with player, it'll clear buffer, write byte. So this is the ID, which would be 1, which on the client is representing the position. Anyway, so it writes the integer. This will tell the client what ID our object is that's being moved, and then it'll also send its X and Y, and then TCP telling us who sent it. So that is what it does. So basically it receives the position and then it sends it back to all the players or clients. Anyway, that is what the server does, and then you just stick it in our room object here, very small. You just need to open it up. So let's go over to our client. This is a little bit more complicated. Once again, we can see that we've loaded in the 39 DLL. So we've loaded all the scripts in. Now we don't need the send var script function. That's added in actually separately. You'll get that though. Because that's really only a server function that we need. Because this thing can't really send messages to all the servers, or clients rather, because it's not the server. Anyway, so we have object connect here. We have two rooms. One of them will connect to the server and get some info, and then it'll send it to the next room where we'll actually play the game. So anyway, object connect here. Here we go. So it just initializes the DLL again, as we saw in the last one. And then we global.tcp. So this is our ID, and then it'll connect. So here's the interesting part. This is the part that you can configure. TCP connect. So this will connect to our server. I'm setting it to the sivart.ca. That is my DNS name. It'll point to on my IP. But anyway, you can stick in your internet IP here. If you want to find out how to get your internet IP, just type in what's my IP into Google, and you'll find your IP. And then here's the port we're connecting to. You saw that in the server. that this is the port we're using, 7777. And then once again, the last number that we leave. So here, just making sure that we've made a connection. So if global.tcp is larger than 0, so if we've made a connection, we go to the next room. If we have not, then it'll show message unable to connect to the server, and it'll end the game. So that's a bad thing. Anyway, so that'll establish a connection and move to the next room, where we have object control to start. So this is the controller object. This one is the one that receives and sends messages to the server. So it'll receive positions for all the other players, and it'll also send its own position so that the server knows where it is. Anyway, so it just creates some variables here, and then in step event we have two different scripts here: receive packages and send packets. So receiving end, we only had a few different ones to send. So let's see, we once again have the M size. It checks to see if there is a new packet. So if there's no packet, if the value equals 0, then that means that the server somehow shut down or we lost connection or something. So then it'll show a message, server has unexpectedly terminated, and then it'll end the game. So that's bad. But if there is a message, then it'll read byte, once again, checking to see what the ID of our packet is, and then the switch tree again to figure out what the packet is. Anyway, so if case 0, this will be the one that, if you remember in the server, this is the packet that'll create our object or tell us that there's a new player in the game. So we create our object, we give it the ID that we also sent in the packet. So yeah, it'll tell the object player what it is. So same thing in the server as is in the client. We have a different player object representing each client, but it's a little bit different. Anyway, so we create the object player with the right ID, and then we'll be able to get it after that. So anyway, case 1, this is the next packet that we can receive. This is the position. So what happens is it gives us the ID, the X and Y. That packet is in the server as well, that it gets sent over to here. So anyway, what it does is it figures out the ID. So we loop through all the players here with player. So it figures out if its ID is equal to the ID we just got from the server. So if we have the right object, then it'll set its position right. Now I have a bunch of variables here. This is a lag reducing feature. What it's attempting to do is make it not so chunky. I'll kind of explain it later, but anyway, the base form is, yeah, it's just sending the position to the new position. Anyway, so that you can actually see it in the client. So here is the last packet. This one is the one where it tells us how many objects are in the room. Like if there is some error where it doesn't get this first packet that would create an object, or say it's not the first client to connect, right? It has to make sure. So what it does is it checks to see if the amount of players that the server says there is larger than our amount of players that we have, then it'll create more objects and give them their IDs. So it's just kind of a, anyway, lag reducing, or not lag reducing, a glitch reducing feature so that we can actually have all the objects. Say you're the 5th person to connect, we have to get all the other people in the room as well that connected before us. So that's what that one is. So that's receiving all the packages from the server. That's how that one works. So now we send packet. We only have to send the one packet, which is the position, and then it already knows our ID on the server. So anyway, it clears buffer, writes byte, the ID, which is 0, because we only have one packet, and then it writes integers, mouse X and mouse Y. Send message, and then this is our ID. Okay, so the idea of this entire game is that people can connect to the server, and then they can move their mouse around and see it, and other people will also see their mouse moving around. I can give you a little demonstration later, but it's really kind of boring unless it's multiplayer. Anyway, so that's how that works. So everything has to be sent and received at the same object. It works way better there. If we do that, we don't want to have separate objects receiving packets. It gets messy. So that's how this all works. That's handy. So then our object player doesn't really need to have much. What it just has is the lag reducing feature. Now what this is it's a bit of a, I don't know, mathematical thing that I kind of worked on. Anyway, what it does is the server will, or the client rather, will send its position variables every step, right? We can actually change that, but the problem is that internet isn't lightning speed. I mean, like, it's not real-time speed, so we have to account for lag. But we don't want to just send our position and then receive our position. That doesn't really work, right? Because then it gets really chunky. So what this tries to do is figure out the amount of time between packets, and it tries to compensate for it, tries to make it smoother. So it's always going to be 1 to 2 steps behind the real thing, but it'll look smoother and it won't actually be that much of a problem. So that's how this works. That's pretty much everything. I'm just going to quickly, I guess, give you a demonstration of it in action. So here's our server again. Gonna run it. Let's see. It just takes a little bit to initialize the DLL. It's got a loading screen here. There we go. See, we have 0 players connected to the client currently. So I can just move that over there and start my client. So I can have as many of these running as I want, and they all do the same thing. So just wait for it to load and connect to myself. Yeah, taking a while. Oh. Could be because my IP changed. Yeah, there we go. Unable to connect to the server. This means that the port is not currently forwarded to my router, so I'm going to have to do that. Let's see. I guess I might as well show you now anyway. So first thing you have to do is find your IP. So let's see here. You just go into your start menu, type in CMD. This is your command prompt here. It's very simple to find your IP. Just type in IP config, hit enter, and find your IP. In this case, yeah, mine has changed. It is now 192.168.1.136. Now this is just my local IP. You can't really trace this back to me in any way. It's just local. So this is the IP I have to port I have to forward. Anyway. So then you go in your nearest web browser, because that's awesome. And then you have to get into your server or your router settings. Now you probably all do have a router. Everybody does, really. Anyway. So in this case, my router default gateway is 192.168.1.1. Okay, so if I type this into the address bar of pretty much any router, then I should get into my router settings. 192.168.1.1. There we go. So if I hit enter here, then it's going to ask for a username and password, probably. So you're going to have to find that out and get into your router settings. So once you're in your router settings here, you can go into your port settings. Find this. It's different on a lot of routers. But anyway, this is my port settings. So we have a bunch of ports forwarded here. So anyway, here's our GM server. Here's the port 7777. And right now it's forwarded to the IP 110. So all I have to do is change it to my actual IP right now, which is 136 at the end. So I can change that. 36, save settings, and perfect. My port has now been forwarded. So now technically the server should work. Let's check it out. Hit play. See if it connects. Hopefully it does. There we go. So here is our client. This is all it is. We can see that I have a little object following my mouse. And we can see on the server here that we have 1 player currently. So what's actually happening here is it's sending a message through the internet, because we used my internet IP, the Sivart.ca. It sent the position to the server, and then it received it back. And here we have, so that little circle is following my mouse, yes, but it's getting that position from the server. Okay, so if anybody else connects to the server, which we can have multiple people connected to the server, then we would also see their mouse moving around along with mine. Let's see if I can actually show that to you now. all I have to do is create an executable. GameMaker won't let me run two of itself at the same time, so I do have to run it in executable form twice. So here we have the client, so let's run him and wait for him to connect. There we go, he's connected. So now let's connect another client. So remember, this will work on multiple computers on any over the internet. So as we can see here, I'm on both screens, kind of weirdly. I can even have both of them in there. So anyway, this isn't two separate processes, and it is sending the position back and forth from the server and back to the client. And this does work online. I have tested it. So I will be sending you this entire package in the description below, so you can download the entire thing. I will have my server running on the Sivart.ca, so you should just be able to double click the client and it'll automatically connect to me, and then you can test this out, or you can edit it and have it connect to your own server, and you can test that out too. So this works perfectly and no glitches. Let's see. If I were to open up the server here, there we go. As we can see, it says players art 2. There's 2 of me, and it works perfectly. So there you have it. There's my 39 DLL tutorial. I hope you enjoyed it and hopefully made sense of it. If you have any questions, you can well, you can use my YouTube email box, or you can go on GM3D forums, or just the Yo-Yo Game forums. Anyway, I guess that's all for now. All links are in the description box below. I hope you enjoyed my video. Goodbye.